Welcome to A Time of Conversation. I'm glad to have a partner here today who's written a new book. And it's very exciting. And her name is Annalisa Parent. And she's going to be with us for this time to tell us about this new book. Annalisa, you have a title, storytelling, catches your eye. But then the rest of the title has another word in there that we don't ordinarily see. So can you tell us about that and tell us about your book and your travels, because you've been on the road?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. So thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back in Middlebury. I'm really happy to be here. So my book, Storytelling for Pantsers. Pantsers are people who fly by the seat of their pants, as is shown by the illustration here. So the subtitle is How to Write and Revise Your Novel Without an Outline. So I'm a writing coach and I help people to finish books. And one of the things that I discovered in my work with authors is that there are people who plan and plot, and there are others who kind of write chapter 1 and then chapter 8 and then maybe a little bit of chapter 7. And when they're finished, they've got what I call the murky, murky mess because they've kind of written all over the place. They don't know what to do with it. They look at this glob and they think, oh, that's not a book. Well, I help them to find the novel in that murky, murky mess. And my mission is really, there are, according to the Bowker Report, there are 20 million people who have writing a book on their bucket list. But with self-publishing and traditional publishing combined, only 1 million books get published every year. That sounds like a lot of books, but when you do the math, you find out that there are 19 million people who didn't publish a book. So I think, what happened to those people? I strongly suspect that they're pantsers who started something, they weren't sure that it was really anything that was publishable, and my mission is really to help those people to get over that hump of finding their novel. So I have a real passion for the pantsers in the world. I'm a pantser myself, to help them to find their story and be able to tell it and get it out into the world.
Do they scratch their head when you first say to them, you're a panther? Or
Sometimes they do, but mostly I think that they're really happy to have a place, to have a home, because a lot of programs or classes or coaches or whatever have said, no, if you want to write a novel, you have to have an outline. And they think, well, I must not be a storyteller, I must not be a novelist, and they don't have a place. And so I think that as silly as this title is, as silly as the picture is, it gives people a home, a place for them to be accepted and to move forward. So I think it feels really good for them.
It must be a really good discovery to have unveiled the fact that there is some real hope here and help.
Absolutely.
In that whole process.
Yeah, and it's a journey, and one that I really enjoy being a part of. And for those writers who have that moment where they can move on from some old advice that they got of you have to do it this way, that didn't work for them. It might work for other writers, but it didn't work for them. And to find a way to move forward, to see their eyes light up and their smile come back. Those stories, when they share those with me, that's really, that makes it all worth it. That's why I do what I do.
Is it hard to help people get over being an outliner?
Well, I wouldn't say that I help people to get over being an outliner. My philosophy is find the writer you are and be that writer. So, people come to me and they say, oh, that's not me. I'm not an pantser, I'm an outliner. And then they explain their process to me and I say, well, it sounds like you're a pantser. The thing is that when you write a novel, there are creative phases and then there are organizational phases. And some people like to be really creative and then they have to come in and organize after. That would be sort of the end of the spectrum, Panther, some people, kind of have milestones. So the character is going to do X, and then the character is going to do Y, and then the character is going to do Z. And so they've got kind of these milestones. It's a kind of an outline. And that helps them along the way. But they're still kind of pantsing in the middle between X and Y and Z and finding their story. Ultimately, authors need to find their story so that they can later organize it so that the reader doesn't feel lost. And so people come to me and say, I'm an outliner. I say, that's great. I can still help you tell your story. People come to me and say, I'm a pantser. I say, that's great. I can help you to tell your story. It's really about finding that balance of creativity and organization.
Well, what does the writing process look like for a panther? Is there a way that is characteristic of, or is each one different?
I think that this process of pantsing is about really being unique, being yourself, finding that process. So it looks different, I think, for every single writer. Of course, there are some commonalities, or I wouldn't be able to kind of put the process into a book and organize it. But it is a unique journey for each writer, and one of the things that is integral to my philosophy and the way that I work with writers is to see them as individuals who each have their own way of doing things. So, side story, I studied neuroscience. I took classes at Harvard and MIT, and I was in the brain imaging lab. I got to do some fMRIs. And I did all of that so that I can really think about how individual brains work, how individual brains create and learn best, and take that information and help that writer to find the very best way to finish his or her novel.
Can you say some more about what are the clues for you that help you guide a person in one direction or the other, coming from brain study?
Sure. One of the things that I'm looking at is based off of Howard Gardner's, he's a professor at Harvard, teaching on learning styles. And so thinking about, some people are very strongly visual, and some of the work that I've done with a lot of the authors is around how do you see your novel. Because when we think about an outline, that you learn to do in 4th or 5th grade, that feels for a lot of people like too much work. It feels like an imposition onto the creative process. But when we start to think about alternative ways to visualize your novel, can we put Post-it notes on the wall? I actually wrote on the walls of my office at home. And I had it was a picture really of my entire novel. So what ways can we find for you to visualize that? If you're very kinesthetic and you like to feel things, how can we make this a tactile experience for you so that you feel your novel? So finding ways to really ground people in their novel that works for their thinking style. One of the analogies that I use is that a lot of writing programs or classes or whatever, they haven't looked at the way that the brain works, and so they don't know any better, but they're teaching these writers in a way that has them running a marathon backwards. And when you learn to use your brain in the right way, suddenly you're moving your knees the way that they're meant to, and you say, oh my goodness, I'm in creative flow. This is so much easier now that I know how to use this tool in the right way. And it's really powerful. I've seen it time and time again, and it's a great gift every time I see it, to see those writers get into that creative flow, and suddenly their novel is just happening for them.
It doesn't sound like a short process, a quick fix. So how long does it generally, would it take to help somebody get through this process?
Len, I think you're not going to believe this, but I help people to finish a novel in 8 weeks.
8 weeks?
That's pretty short.
I haven't
all
finished
things
term
considered.
papers in that length of time.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it works. We've got a system. We have a program. We work with writers from all over the world. You met Andy. She's the personal trainer in the writing gym. So we're helping. It's a very holistic view of the writer as a person. So we're helping the author to have the accountability to get it done in 8 weeks. So we're really firm on goals, and not just like, I'm going to write 10 words a minute or whatever, but also to think about the emotional experience of writing a novel. Sometimes it's hard to get your story out. Our character falls into a situation that's very similar to ours, or reminds us of the time that we lost our mother in the grocery store, whatever. There are things that come up when we're writing. So we're looking at that author holistically to help them to move through that. But we're also giving them the craft skills that they need to complete the novel, and not just about good storytelling. Of course, telling a good story is important to finishing a novel and eventually traditionally publishing a novel. But one of the things that I do every week is I sit down in conversations like this one with literary agents, with editors, with publishers, so that I know what it is that they're seeing, what it is that they're looking for, and then I can take that information and say, hey Len, you're writing this mystery. Here's what this agent said to me last week about what people are looking for now, or what people should avoid when they write mysteries. So, craft knowledge, what's trending in the industry, what people are looking for, and also, those experiences based on neuroscience, which we do every week in our program. It's called the Writing Gym, so that writers can be in that creative flow and really using their brain in the very best way. And so all of those ingredients put together into one pot help those writers to get that novel done in 8 weeks.
Sounds exciting.
It's you can probably tell I love it. It's a lot of fun.
A question I always seem to ask at some point was, where did all this come from for you? As a child, were you the storyteller, or was someone, or the story listener? If you don't mind.
Yes, I'd love to share that with you. Thank you for asking. So it's funny, my mom came to a book signing that I had last weekend in Keene, New Hampshire, and she just looked at me and said, on the one hand, I don't know where this came from, because she does not care for writing. On the other hand, it makes total and utter sense, because I was that child who, told a story about fairies and giants or giraffes or whatever. I always had a story to tell, and I wanted to write those down. So storytelling was always very important to me.
So you were the storyteller.
I was the storyteller, always making up stories, and God bless my brother, he played along with the dragon games and
yes. Did he take the parts?
Oh yeah, we would role play the stories and create
let's do
plays.
A play.
Yes, we had a lot of plays, and my parents
Mickey
came
Rooney.
and watched.
Go way back.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. It's good. It's good you had a cooperative brother.
He was wonderful about playing along. Yes.
Yeah. That's great.
And then, I came here to Middlebury. I went to Middlebury College and had the distinct honor of studying creative writing with Julia Alvarez as a Middlebury student. And a shout out to her. She was amazing and wonderful, and I learned so much.
Every presentation I've ever been to with her has just been remarkable.
Yeah, she's fabulous.
And his husband was my eye doctor. Different quiet band.
Yeah.
Different, but great people.
Absolutely.
Great people.
Yeah, and she was not only an amazing writing professor, but also so warm, and invited us, the students, our class, to her home, and still writes to me. She's just a wonderful mentor and friend.
Yeah. Now, do you get people coming to you who haven't started a novel, who haven't thought about starting a novel, and all of a sudden one day they wake up from a dream and they say, I should write a novel? Do you get folks like that?
Absolutely.
And what do you do with them?
Well, you have to start somewhere, right?
Sure.
So some people come to us and they've got a couple of chapters written. Some people come to us, they've got an entire first draft written. And some people, as you point out, come to us and they don't have a word down on a page, but they've got the idea up here. And so really for those people, there are generally two things that are going on. One is the courage, and that's really big, you know. And as I said, you know, we treat the writer holistically, so we need to talk about that. What's getting in the way? You know, why don't you want to get your story out? Because there's a push-pull there. I want to tell my story. I don't want to tell my story. So let's figure out what that is. Once we can get over that hurdle, well, then putting it on the page is actually the easier part. So we're just going to get that story out. We're going to tell that story. And that's what we do, is help people to tell their stories every day. Sometimes it's a memoir and it's a real story, and sometimes it's a novel and it's a fictional retelling of something that really happened.
So there's this whole range. It could be the story of my life, a story of someone else's life impacting me. It could be something of imagination. It could be poetry. All of those things, and you work with all those folks, and
yes. So
in different ways.
I specifically work with storytellers, so that could be memoirists or novelists, and I also work with non-fiction writers who are specifically wanting to tell their business story.
Okay.
So how they started a business, why they want to help people, that kind of thing.
Is storytelling and businesses really connecting and meshing, and where's the status of that? I mean, sometimes businesses have just tried to do advertisements. They try to be the cleverest advertisement.
Right.
And some of them, now in commercials, are telling stories. So what's the mix right now as you see it?
Well, I think that storytelling has become a really powerful tool for business owners. What it does for a business owner is it makes them more relatable. You know, hearing my story about how and why I started my business makes me a little bit more interesting, perhaps, because then there's an understanding. And we all have reasons why we started a business, why we want to serve people. Now, I only work with business owners who have that servant's heart, who really want to help people, whether it's through plumbing or architecture or coaching, whatever it is, that there's a heartfelt reason for doing that. And that's an important thing to share with people. Here's why I do things. Here's why I want to help people in the world to have better plumbing, have better houses, have better books, whatever it is.
Yeah, okay. Have there been some surprises that have come to you?
Oh, yes.
That you said, did I sign up for this?
I mean, I think every day has its surprises. Every day is a little different, and that's one of the reasons why I love what I do. You know, all of the authors are different, unique individuals. And I would say that the biggest surprise for me right now has been the sense of family that these writers have with each other, the sense of community that they've created, which is just beautiful and touching. And makes me a little bit teary-eyed sometimes when I see the way, you know, that they've taken our business, which is about really caring for the individual and really helping people to tell their stories, and then I see them interacting with each other in that way and valuing each other and encouraging each other to tell their stories and encouraging them to have the courage to tell their stories. It's really, really beautiful. And Len, we're headed for a retreat at a manor house on the coast of England in a couple of weeks here. Yeah, I'm really excited.
That's a story in itself.
It sure is. And just seeing the way that they're preparing for that and encouraging one another and getting to know one another as part of this this journey. It's really exciting, and so we're doing this retreat on the coast of England in Devon, and then in October we've got one, I call it Riding in the Rockies. We'll be at a dude ranch with horse riding, and so they're already signing up for that retreat as well, and just watching them care for, nurture each other, and get their books done and published. It's just, it's the most amazing surprise gift that I could ever have.
What about people who come with a painful story? Who are either trying to face that or not knowing they should face it or could face it? What do you have some encounters with folks like that?
Absolutely, and it happens whether they're telling fiction, whether they're writing memoir. Things come up for people, and so there's a lot of trust in my job, and there's a lot of counseling. I'm not a counselor, I'm not a certified counselor, but when we write, we're being real, we're being our most authentic selves. And so I feel like the writers I work with, I know as much about their lives probably as anyone in their life, because it comes up, it comes out, and I've got small shoulders, but there are a lot of tears that happen on these small shoulders, and it's wonderful, and it's cathartic, and it helps people to get over that hump and to have the courage to get that story out.
So you do a combination of individual coaching and group work, right? Yes. So can you talk a little bit about how that works itself out?
Yeah, it's very interesting. There are times when I'm working one-on-one with the author, and that's where we're having those emotional conversations. There are things that are appropriate for that one-on-one relationship that wouldn't be appropriate in front of the group because they're very vulnerable. And the group sessions are wonderful because that's where people come together for community, and they're starving for the kind of quality writing community that we've created, that we have, where they're nurtured and cared for, and we have fun, we laugh a lot, and the other benefit of the group is that people are all at different phases in their novel writing process, and so you hear somebody who's further along than you are ask a question, and it says to you, when I get to that point, I'd better be thinking about that. So they're also learning from each other and from each other's processes. And I would say that the biggest benefit that they talk about is the power of hearing other people's stories. Not just the novel itself that they're writing, but also the journey of writing that novel and getting it out. So there's a lot of power in that combination of one-on-one and group work.
So as you go through this experience, have there been other things that you really want to talk about that I missed here in this, asking these questions?
Well, I just want to say that I'm really grateful to be here. I really appreciate this interview. I'm really excited for the upcoming retreat in England. I'm really excited for the upcoming retreat in Colorado, and I would encourage anyone who would like to write with us to get in touch.
Okay, we've got more time, so but I just thought I'd ask that.
No. I mean,
at this point,
I guess I would like to talk a little bit about
please do.
Okay, about the book. So we have storytelling for Panthers, and this walks people through how to write and revise a novel without an outline. And we do have the accompanying workbook, which has all the exercises from the book as well. And this has been great. I've been on book tour. I've been all over New England, Colorado, and I'm headed to do a European book tour in 3 weeks. So I'll be in some of the major cities of Europe talking about my book, and I'm really excited to do that and to meet writers all over the world.
Do you have a novel in the works too?
I do. So it's on the agent's desk, and we're working on getting that shopped out right now to the publishers. So,
so
one book at a time.
Okay. You're close then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That must feel good.
Yes, absolutely.
And is there an idea back there that is just beginning to percolate?
Oh, well, we writers, we always have too many ideas for stories. So yes, this is a novel series that I've got imminently publishing at the moment, and then I'm working on a completely different concept. So I write in the genre formerly known as chick lit and formerly known as women's fiction. So yeah, I've got a new, more
you miss
psychological
beach book.
Yeah, that's right. It's exactly what it is, a beach read. My philosophy is that a book should be enjoyable to read and fun to read, but also contain some of the elements of high literature, because those people who, like me, who enjoy something that's fun to read, that we can read on the beach or an airplane, also want something a little bit more, a little, maybe some symbolism or something a little deeper to sink their teeth into. So that's how I write, and I'm having a great time doing it. So far, my readers are enjoying it as well. And, I think that some of that came across in Storytelling for Pantsers as well, which we say we like to write with people who take writing seriously but don't take themselves too seriously. And this book has some serious content. It's going to help people to learn how to write, but it's also whimsical and silly and fun.
Yeah.
Because that's my philosophy.
The piece that I read about your book said things like that, and about how insightful it was, but also how much fun it was.
Oh, good.
In that whole process, There was a time, many times probably in the history of writing, that novels have been considered to be out of date and all that. And I'm raising a big question here at the end of this time, so I apologize.
No,
but it appears that novels are not dead, right?
Oh gosh, I hope not. The thing is, there's a book called Wired for Story, and our brains are wired for story. And the earliest cavemen sat around and told stories.
I have that on my shelf and haven't read it yet.
So we're never going to stop telling stories.
Oh.
We tell stories in many, many ways. One of the ways we tell them is in novels, and so that experience that was, the cavemen in their cave telling stories to one another, in modern day we can read them in books. We will always tell stories. So will we always have paper novels? That I don't know, but we will always tell stories.
Okay, that's a good note on which we say thank you for spending the time, and I'm looking forward to reading your book and to looking forward to the things that you're going to be doing in the future.
Thank you so much.
And it's been very helpful to have this time together.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Have some of your own.